dear guests, dear students, it's my pleasure to host you today also. And it's a great pleasure to have you in today's session devoted to session number 1, devoted to innovative research in economics from the perspective of North America. And so in fact, we have just to make some technical issues, we have two round of questions, which is addressed to all the speakers. And then at the end of the session, we'll try to answer some questions that arise during our discussion. So let me start with the first question, just the general one, which we would like, which is addressed to all the speakers, to all our guests. And could you please describe the scope of your research? I mean topics, contribution to theory, major findings. What do you consider very important in your research? So maybe Professor Mike Peng will start with the first question.
Do you want us to sit here and go?
Yes, I think that we can sit.
Okay.
It's
so
up to you.
Can I have the remote? Is the remote? Good morning. Jin Kuyang Chi. For the second time. I want to thank your university and the hosts for having me the second day, and then you'll be seeing me for a few more days. So some of you might have come here. So I want to switch topic a little bit, because today we have homework to do. Professor Dziembała gave us the homework questions, asking us to describe our work. And then from that point on, we'll talk a bit about the innovative aspects of research. So by way of introduction, I want to say that I received all my education in North America, but for the first time, I'm speaking on behalf of the North American perspective. I don't think I ever thought of it this way. But in terms of primary discipline, my academic training is in strategic management, and my academic interest is in global business. In addition to serving as a faculty member at UT Dallas, I have previously served as a faculty member at Ohio State University, Chinese University of Hong Kong, and University of Hawaii, and have been a visiting professor at some of these countries and have lectured in many places. So this, I want to emphasize, is my first visit to a business school or a university in the wonderful region of Central and Eastern Europe. I mean it when I say the wonderful region, because I've done some research on Central and Eastern Europe, but I have never had the pleasure of engaging in academic presentations and debates until yesterday. So that is really a personal pleasure and an honor. So thank you for coming here. In terms of the impact, there was an additional question, what is the impact? So lots of papers, a reasonable number of Google citations, and so on and so forth. So maybe I'll skip this. So one aspect I would argue that we tend to do in North America research is we tend to be global. Actually, I have never seen any colleague who will say, I do North America research. But I've seen colleagues who will tell me I do Africa research or Asia research. I think we'd like to focus on fundamental questions in the field. Everybody has a field. If you double major, you have two fields. So if you're majoring marketing, so you know the fundamental questions in marketing. You do economics, you know some fundamental questions in economics. So for what I do, I focus on fundamental questions in strategy and international business. I actually published a paper in this aspect. So in the field of strategic management, if you want to ask me, is this a North American perspective or a global perspective, I would argue this actually is a global perspective, but we can use North American data or European data or Africa data. So from Roumel, Chandel, and Thies, three leading scholars in the field of strategic management, they published a definitive book in 1994. In my view, very influential, guiding my work, and I think guiding the work of a lot of us working in the field. So we try to understand these four fundamental questions. Fundamental questions serve a purpose. Once you see a question, you know this is not a marketing question. This is not an information systems question. This is a strategic management question. And I did consult with Professor Dziembała beforehand. Economics before borders, it's a wonderful term, but as I showed you, I'm not an economist by training. I don't really do narrowly defined economics research. But what I do is, broadly speaking, business administration or strategic management or global business research. So with that understanding, I can share with you these 4 questions. Number 1, why do firms differ? Number 2, how do firms behave? Number 3, what determines the scope of the firm? And number 4, what determines the success and failure of firms around the globe? So it is the interest in trying to dive deep into some of these fundamental questions that has been guiding my research and the research of a lot of colleagues in the field. Yesterday, I presented this book, my newest global strategy, to Professor Smirchik. So I can tell you one thing, every edition of this book, in every chapter, I try to answer, address, and focus on some of these fundamental questions. So the advice I would suggest is really think big. And we all start small. Every one of us would start small. But when you start something small, a small research problem, a small context, a small study, a small company, but don't forget why you are doing this. So hopefully you will create that link that your small project, your small company that you are studying is somehow connected to help us understand and answer some of the big questions in the field. And I understand not every one of us is in strategic management, but I just want to use this as an example. Maybe I'll stop here. How about this? Because otherwise I'll run a quiz, but I'll do that later. Is that all right?
And yeah, and what about the scope of research? Professor Miroux, could you answer this question? And I mean major findings, contribution to theory, some reflections.
I also have a small presentation which I'd like to have on the screen. And first, just to let you know, I'm very happy to be in Katowice at the University of Economics and addressing students. I think it's always very stimulating because you are the world of tomorrow. So we hope that the message we are giving is really going to reach you. First thing. Second thing, I will present some of the works that I've been doing with my colleague, Lourdes Casanova, at the Emerging Market Institute at the Johnson College of Business at Cornell University. It will just be a glimpse of what we are doing because I will zoom over a report, but Lourdes and I, separately or together, we also publish on a number of papers. I also must say that as a background, I'm mixing a business background because I did a business school in France, so a European one, so I'll be very happy to share with you, though my experience dates back quite some time. So I graduated from HEC in France, and then I also did at the same time, and it's also an advice to mix topics, to mix areas. I did a PhD in economics at Sorbonne University, which I finished in the early 80s, I'm sorry to say. And last point, I also did a master in politics. So when you mix all that, I think you better understand the economics and the relationship with politics, because economics is politics and vice versa. And we see it so much nowadays. That's something I'd love to continue, but I'll stop there. Anyway, so EMI is an institute where basically what we try to do is to expose the students, hopefully they will be the business leaders of tomorrow, to issues to which they are not that familiar. So since we are in North America, emerging markets is not necessarily something that students are very familiar with. And it's important to understand not only the business aspects, but all the environment around, including the macroeconomics. So we have a team. Lourdes Casanova is the head of the institute and the faculty fellow. And we work a lot with the students. It's very important to engage with them, to have side activities in addition to the normal work. I know that means workload, but at the end, I think it's quite rewarding. We have 3 pillars: education, outreach, research, and knowledge. I'll go back to that later on for the second session of the question. Now the research. Just as I said a moment ago, if you want, the annual report that we publish on emerging market multinational contains a lot of the research that we are doing. At the Institute, we have decided, because we are in the business school, to zoom on the business enterprises of emerging economies. We have published up to now 7th report. The last one was dealing with some of the issues related with global value chain. The first one was dealing specifically with the rise of China, and as years went back, we were fascinated in a way about realizing the overwhelming presence of China in business from emerging economy, and then obviously globally. We collaborate with a number of international organizations, the World Bank, the OECD, the United Nations, the Inter-American Development Bank, and so on, and a number of universities. Again, I hope I'll be able to get back to it later on. First thing I wanted to mention, we are zooming on emerging markets, and an issue because my field is international business and international economics and emerging markets, the first issue we wanted to specify is what is an emerging market. And it's a very interesting question because there are various ways to define it. And the main problem or challenge is that there is no commonly agreed definition of what is an emerging market. And there are areas in economics where you will have to define precisely the subject, the animals that you are studying. Otherwise, you will go overboard and you will not be able to limit specifically what you want to study or analyze. So, bottom line, there was no definition. There were lists from investors, from international organizations, and so on. And the criteria were very different. Some people were even including the democracy or political system criteria. So we decided, because we wanted to examine the changes which was taking place in the global economy, we said, okay, we are going to establish a list of the 20 top emerging economies, those that basically everybody will agree are emerging economy and that are representative of the phenomenon which is taking place. A phenomenon that we could summarize by a shift of global economic and geopolitical power in the world. So we constructed, or we established a list of the 20 largest emerging economies and took into consideration a number of criteria. For instance, we eliminated those who are considered as advanced economy. And for this, there is a special list published by the IMF. You have on the right the list of the E20, or the 20 largest economy that we consider emerging. By the way, this list is very close to a list which was published by IMF staff. I do not say the IMF because there is no official list, but IMF staff. It's very close, and our criteria also really are relatively similar. But what we did last year is that we decided to put China in a unique position. China is so particular that when you look at emerging economy, you have to do with and without China. Otherwise, your conclusion will be blurred and may just only reflect the Chinese phenomenon. Okay, our research. We are a business school, so it's really practical-oriented. It's practice-oriented. And I want to draw your attention to the importance of applied research. And there was a very interesting article published in early 2022 by Lilac Nashum, Karsovan, and Arivan Ashe, which was Agenda for Practice-Oriented Research. And the idea was their international business in particular suffers, and I would almost say economics in general, suffers from lots of theoretical paper, very interesting, econometric and so on. You end the paper and you say, and so what? I mean, does it help me? So our idea, if you want, very modestly, is that our research help practitioners, that is, yes, business manager. As I said, we are working with students which will be hopefully business leaders, but also policymakers. And perhaps I think, or it's my political background formation, I think when you write a paper, it will be increasingly important to say, in terms of policy implication, what does that mean? And we can take again about it later on. And last point, my colleague and myself, we have a wealth of data available. I have the privilege of experience, not to say age, so that, 20 or 30 years ago, when we were doing a study, it was hard to get the data. Really. You would call the IMF or the World Bank. At best, you would send an email when not so long ago, and you might get a file somewhere. Nowadays, at the click of a button, you have access to a wealth of information, including on poorest country. Various type of information from the World Bank, the IMF, the UN, you name it. And you have also databases from corporation, that's expensive as recognized, but it does exist. So this is available to the students, and it enables us to work better. But, and I come back to a question mentioned by Mike, it is important to have the question first, and then you look at the data. Not necessarily you say, oh, that's the data I have. What I'm going, to mine them and play with them, and perhaps I'll have something interesting. That's an advice I would give to all the students which have in mind to do research. What is your question? How useful will it be? And where is the data? That's the sequence I would suggest. The topics. Emerging markets in a new phase of globalization. The China factor is a topic with my colleague we have focused on. We published a book in 2020, which was called The Era of Chinese Multinational Competing for Global Dominance. That was just at the time there was a rivalry between, the rivalry always existed, by the way, but it just became more visible between China and the United States. We also publish every year a list of the top 500 largest business from emerging markets. There is a global Fortune 500, so we are trying to copy in a way, very modestly. It's a way, we are signaling a way. We don't pretend we are the best, but these are avenue for further research. And the key issues we have been focusing recently, sustainable development, especially ESG, the pros and cons. There is a lot of pros, but there is a lot of cons also. Innovation from emerging markets, it's part of the shift I was mentioning. Emerging markets are no longer the copycats they were considered in the past. In a number of areas, they are becoming leaders, and this has to be recognized, in particular for Western traditional multinationals, because they mean that they are becoming huge competitors, and on top of it, they have a huge consumer markets, which they know very well. So that's the first one. And the last one is digitalization, because digitalization or digitization is at the heart of the transformation that is taking place. It's opening a number of avenues in markets or in economies which were a little, the laggard and left aside. Again, an issue which is, the cost of infrastructure. What does it mean in terms of digitalization? And finally, a snapshot on the report that we published. The final version will be available in February 2023. The shifting business landscape that we, illustrate every year, just a very simple graph. You now have in the Fortune Global 500 more Chinese firms than American firms. That tells quite a lot in terms of economic weight. And you can see that the change really has taken 10 years to be so visible and manifest. We also highlight the fact that the growth of the Chinese multinational in the global and the biggest business is a little bit at the expense of other emerging markets, but more at the expense of developed economies, especially in Europe. You have much less UK company in the Fortune Global 500 nowadays than 10 years ago, and so the Europeans have lost a lot, and the Japanese. Again, it also explains to some extent the relation or the apprehension of advanced economies vis-à-vis, in particular, the Chinese multinationals. But that being said, let's not forget that there are other major economies in the making. I'm thinking about of India, Brazil, and so on. And perhaps, do I have a little bit of time, or I am a little over?
A little bit over, so I think that we'll just...
so perhaps we'll stop there, and then I can get back to it later.
Yes, later.
Okay,
so,
very good.
So thank you very much for this global perspective, and I mean the emerging market perspective, and then we move to the Polish perspective and to the regional perspective. And so let me present Professor Musiałkowska from the Poznań University. And the same question about the topic, scope of the research, very fascinating one, the regional perspective, but the international perspective at the same time.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me and for having me here in Katowice, and thank you, Małgorzata, for this kind words. So, firstly, I'd like to present our university. We are in Katowice, but also in Poznań we have one of the oldest business schools that was founded in 1926. And our main mission, according to our strategy, is also to provide social responsibility, conduct innovative research, and educate leaders of the future. So this is the main message from the strategy. And also, I'd like to show the clusters of our research that were proposed quite recently at the university. So this is focused around sustainable and resilient economy as the first, technological and business innovations, and also sustainable consumption and production, and inclusive society. So we looked at the research that is prepared by our scholars, and we tried to gather it together around those four, and also we are just trying to research the most important issues in the current societies and economies. So going back to the question that was posed, I'd like to focus on three issues, on three projects that is conducted either by our department and also by our colleagues from the university and also from the Institute of International Business and Economics. Also, my background is a bit wider because I graduated from the international economic and political relations, so it's quite similar to what Anne was just presenting, and we also have this broader understanding of the context, which is very much important for the contemporary research. And also I got my PhD in international economics and regional studies, and habilitation in more comparative studies on transfer of a European regional policy that it's delivered at subnational level. So we are going back from the national context to the regional and local, to other countries and other organizations. So my focus was on, is it possible first to transfer, to learn from the experiences of Europe and other countries and other organizations, also in American and Southern American. I covered Latin America, which also includes Mexico, which somehow fits to the topic of today's conference. So it was the first issue to be asked, is it possible, is it happening, and how is it happening? And also another important issue is what are the factors, what are facilitators and inhibitors of such an exchange that might happen in the international arena. So I think it's quite broad because you can apply it to any kind of policy or a business event that happens, and then you have to apply it to a certain field and adjust it accordingly to your perspective, to your research perspective. So I would say that maybe going to the next question, what's innovative is first is the scope of the research, because I analyzed in my research something that is the policy that it's directed internally, because if you deliver regional policy, you think about the country and disparities between different units of territory. And my question was, is it possible that somebody else will use something that is called in Europe regional or cohesion policy elsewhere? So it was the first, and it resulted that via different channels it was possible. So it was my first finding, and also, of course, it's more visible in terms of ideas and concepts, and it's quite difficult when it comes to the implementation of the policy, because then you need a political will and support just to implement certain solutions in different settings. So it was just like the main findings and main contribution also to the literature. What was the question of Professor Dziembała? And I think it was one of the most fascinating projects I also shared with the colleagues from the whole European Union, from other universities, because we organized a conference on such a topic, and it was well received also among other scholars. And as the outcome, I'm just coming back to the more like promotion of something, we presented a special issue on international learning and transfer of the policy with regards to regional development, spatial planning, and transportation as well, and it's published in 2018 in Regional Studies. So if you are interested in that, you can read a lot of contributions of other colleagues with regards to the issue. So it was one of the like transferring of European experiences abroad, also to Americas, to build Americas. So this is the first research project I wanted to highlight. The second is, I would say, more international. Of course, the context will matter for the answers that we got, but it was about cryptocurrencies and the future of local currencies as such, and we started to verify if cryptocurrencies can be a future. Are they used in the crisis by the countries, by people, and by the companies as well? And it was a set of also findings mainly in two papers that bring comparative perspective to our research. One is around whether the Bitcoin is safe haven, hedge, or diversifier in different countries that will use to some extent the cryptocurrencies. And then we were looking especially at the countries that is under the crisis situation, which was Venezuela, and it is well quite interesting. If you read the comparison between other assets like gold, like oil, and also other assets that are available. So it was another one. And the third one, we were just at the end of the project. It was around urban regeneration and the use of sustainable financing with the use of public instruments, public financial instruments. Mainly, this instrument is called Jessica initiative, that it uses EU funding for urban regeneration. So it was like the quite recent project, and we published a book this year about financial engineering and sustainable funding of urban development in the European Union, with a special case of Poland. So this is another scope of research. And of course we have more. I just picked up three of them just to start the discussion. And I think that for this part I will stop in here, and if we have more time we will discuss the issue. Thank you.
So dear professors, thank you very much for the excellent introduction to the main topic of our session. So now we start with this, concerning innovation. So now we start with the second round of questions. concerning innovation, as I mentioned. So we have the global, national, emerging market perspective and the regional one. So different perspectives are included into the session. So, the second question is, if you could briefly describe and could give us the view on what is the innovative in your research. What is the best practice, if it's possible, in disseminating research results to academics in North America and Europe? What are differences between the North American and European perspective and in research in terms of theoretical foundation and research methodology? Shall we start with Professor Peng? I think with this global perspective, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Let me continue. This is a real quiz in my opening day, okay? So all of you are my students. Opening day quiz. The question is right in front of you. Professor Miroux just gave you some preview about Fortune Global 500, okay? So in alphabetical order, which city has the largest number of headquarters of Fortune Global 500 companies? Alphabetically, Beijing, London, New York, Paris, Tokyo. So here's your North American perspective, European perspective, Asian perspective. Economics without borders, okay? Okay, here are my rules. Everybody, students, don't shout. Raise your hand. Everybody, 2 rules. Rules of the game. Number 1, everybody must participate. Everybody must raise your hand. Second, everybody can only raise your hand once. One hand once only, okay? So we have about 200 people, right? So, okay, alphabetically, Beijing. Maybe, shall we say 20, 30 hands? Okay, all right. London. London, 2 hands, all right. New York. Everybody must be voting once, okay? So, New York, how many hands do we have? 20, 30, 40 maybe? Okay. Okay, then Paris. Paris is 0. Then the rest of you must be voting for Tokyo. Not everyone voted. Someone cheated. In Australia, if you don't vote, you will be arrested. Okay? But we cannot arrest you. So the results, who knew the results? Who knew the correct answer? When you voted for different cities, right? Who knew the correct answer? No one knew. You were guessing. Okay, fine. Guessing. Majority of you voted for slightly more of you voted for New York, right? People voted for New York. The majority of my students voted for New York. The answer is wrong. Okay? New York is number 3. So let's do second round voting. Second round. Eliminate New York, okay? Second round. Okay, so Paris and London didn't get enough votes, so we can eliminate those. No, competition boils down to Beijing versus Tokyo. Okay, second round, Beijing versus Tokyo. Okay, everybody please vote. Alphabetically, Beijing. More hands up. Okay, Tokyo. Smaller number. Second round, yes, you won. Beijing, write it down if you didn't know. Beijing now has the largest number of Fortune Global 500 company headquarters. And Miroux and I had almost the same slides, right? I have 1 extra year. So now we have to study these companies, top 10 companies, top 10 countries. So how I would do my research, take a look at the data. Theory-driven, but also data-driven. What do the data tell us? There are lots of ways to read the data, but I just want you to focus on the top 10 companies, right? And there are many ways to read the data, but here's one way I read the data. Of the top 10 companies, 6 of them are state-owned. 6 of them are state-owned. And a couple of decades ago, we saw state-owned companies were becoming obsolete. They would be privatized. We don't need to spend too much time studying them. I guess we are wrong as a field. So how do firms differ? How do state-owned firms and privately owned firms differ? We don't know enough about the answer. That's why we do research. There is this rise of state capitalism. And why are SOEs, such an enduring and adaptive organizational form. Many people predicted their demise, their death. They're going down the historical dustbin, and they refuse to die, despite the best efforts to privatize them, to kill them. That's worthy of research. Why do firms differ? Fundamental question one. So I started doing some of my research on SOEs in 1996. I published one of the first papers in the Academy of Management Review, a management theory journal. And you know what? After a quarter century, I continue to work on this question. This newest paper is called Pyramid Ownership and SOE Innovation. Most people thought SOEs are not going to be very innovative. Actually, I'll come back to that SOE list. The largest Chinese company is number 3, State Grid. I went to ask my own students, name the largest Chinese company. All of them said Alibaba. Some of them said Tencent. And then someone said Huawei. All wrong. State Grid. State Grid is this large, obscure, but powerful multinational company that no one paid much attention except when I met Anne Murray and her colleague Lourdes. They kindly wrote a very interesting case study opening up what's going on inside that company. So I think this is part of this research. How does State Grid behave in a different way than all of these other companies? You know all of these other companies, okay? So take a look again. You have 4 Chinese SOEs. Saudi Aramco is state-owned. The last state-owned company is someone everybody knows, but nobody knows it is state-owned. It is Volkswagen. Volkswagen is owned by 2 German state governments. Are they state-owned? Yes, Volkswagen is state-owned. So how do they behave differently? That is a fundamental question. All right? Give you some other examples. Going down. How do firms behave? This is some data from a paper, not by me, by some colleagues. I quoted their source, Bloom et al. So they look at different countries. 1 to 5, referring to management quality. 5 is the highest quality, 1 is the lowest quality. All right? So they look at the US distribution, and they look at the distribution across different parts of the world. So essentially what they found is you look at China, you look at India, you look at Greece and Portugal, they have a large tail to your left side, meaning they have a highest number of companies not on the right side. You have more companies on the right side, better performing companies. So how do we theorize about such findings? That's question 2. How do firms behave? Basically, how can firms from one country improve capabilities, performance? So how do we move more companies to the right, basically? From a policy standpoint, you guys focused on policy standpoint, right? As a policymaker, you look at these distribution of capabilities, right? So how can we move more companies to the right side? Developing the resource-based view, special resources and capabilities, that's another way to answer the question. And another way to look at this is previous generations of scholars, Michael Porter to your left, Jay Barney to the right, they took a look at the industry, 5 forces. They took a look at the special resources and capabilities, right, the resource-based view. So they have their answers. And what my colleagues and I have been trying to do is to add an institution-based answer. So we developed the strategy tripod. We say, you need to look at the industry for sure. You need to look at firm-specific resources and capabilities for sure. But don't forget, institutional transitions and conditions, they drive strategy. Ultimately, they drive performance. We have done some research on institution-based views, starting with the official pronunciation or announcement in 2002-2003. And this is a paper for which I'm very proud. Award-winning research, probing theoretically into Central and Eastern Europe. My colleague Klaus Meyer and I did this paper in 2005, and after 10 years, colleagues in the Journal of International Business Studies, JIBS, JIBS, nominated this paper to be the JIBS Decade Paper, Best Decade Paper Award. So we basically said, look, transitions are happening, companies are growing or shrinking left and right. How do we make theoretical sense? So we suggest 3 theories. Transaction cost being one. Each privatization deal, for example, is a transaction. You go to your supermarket, you buy a bottle of milk, that is a transaction. So transactions not only refer to consumers buying and selling, it also refers to buying and selling companies. That is a transaction. There are costs. And some companies do better than others. What's unique about these companies? Resources and capabilities. And under the conditions of great transitions, institutions are changing. Why some companies are rising to the top. Other companies are sinking. Some companies learn how to swim. Other companies, you teach them all the tools. They never learn. Why is this? Well, institutions have something to do with it. And more recently, we continue to promote the institution-based view as the third leg for strategy tripod. And this is a paper that almost got JIP's 2018 Decade Award. They decided not to give me the award because, remember, 3 years ago, they already gave me the Best Paper Award. So in the name of diversity and inclusion, they decided not to give me the award. Because the award receiving paper for the 2008 paper was a great paper, but its citation numbers are smaller than what this paper is getting. This is the another way to say institution-based view of international business strategy. This time we focus on emerging economies. I could go on, but let me stop here and let other colleagues.
So thank you very much for your perspective. And now we move to Professor Miroux. And what is innovative in your research? Please briefly describe us this. I do hope it will be the emerging market perspective, yeah?
Yeah, I will quickly go on some of the elements that we are doing, and also I'll try to elaborate a little bit about, at least from my experience, how we teach and how we relate with the students in the institute. But just building on upon what Mike has just said, as I said a moment ago, our work is a database and evidence-based, so we mine data. So we did an exercise which may have, which you might repeat or can be further elaborated. 2 or 3 years ago, we looked at the price of similar product, really similar characteristic in the United States and sold by either Chinese or other emerging market companies and US company. We eventually zoomed on Chinese company because one criteria was the biggest seller in the US market. And the idea was to see, okay, how do the prices compare? It's always a little bit difficult because, if you have a computer, that one has more memory and so on. But we worked with a group of associate researchers and students, and we basically scoped through the internet again, because we had access to the data. And of course, it's related to the time, but if you take a snapshot at that particular time, it was, I think, we began in 2017, we looked at the computer, desktop, laptop, smartphones, refrigerators, washing machine, and so on. And it was quite difficult to know whether an 8-kilo washing machine was better than a 4 and so on. That kind of thing, very practical. But the bottom line is that, yes, we could say that Chinese companies still compete on price. There is no denial about it. But there are sectors where the price differential was much less than expected. That's the first. And there were sectors where even 1 or 2 brands was higher, more expensive than the US brands. And the most glaring example at the time was the telephone. And we did it again last year. We in the UK market for the smartphone, because Huawei cannot be sold in the US. And we could see that, for instance, in the smartphone, you have a Chinese brand like Huawei who targets the lower end, but also the higher end of the market. So bottom line, they can cover the whole range of consumer. And that's a major change because it means that they are becoming formidable competitors. And it goes very much with the efforts which are being made in terms of branding. And to tell you the truth, I think it was 2018 or 19, I was stuck because I was in Paris, next to Notre Dame. And there was a huge building. And there was a huge, a drape with the word of Huawei. It was like, I don't know how many square meters covering a facade of a building. You would never have seen that 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. Or you arrive in Roissy and you have ICCTV, the Chinese channel, with publicity. Or you are in Switzerland and you watch TV and you get advertisement for higher wild goods. So this is really changing the landscape, and it means that for the people who, the enterprises from the traditional Western, they have perhaps to reconsider the way they are going about. And what does it mean in terms of research and also messages? And that's a motto that my colleague often repeats, is that she said, in the US, we were used to teach kind of students that it was important for the enterprise to maximize the price the customer was willing to pay. That's still the case, but when you have a competitor who has innovative product, good quality product, and low price, then you are in trouble. So that's the kind of studies that we are doing. And that's really something we want to further, because it's an interesting topic. I'll stop there in terms of the type of research that we are doing, but you were asking, the differences between, in terms of research. My experience is limited to what I know at the Cornell University, so I cannot generalize if I could say. But first, in the relation with the students, and it's open. The door is always open. We involve the students in our work. We have a dialogue, and we try to have dialogue. I think it's also taking place also in Europe, but so I do not say it's the best. I cannot compare because I don't have a point of comparison nowadays. I have a point of comparison 30 or 40 years ago, and it was very different. But it's very important so that the students, they feel they are part of the research exercise also, so that they can broaden their scope, that the openness is a key element. And the other element in terms of research, and I was very interested in by your example, is that I have the feeling, but that's again my personal feeling, perhaps my experience is limited, is that perhaps in Europe there is a closer relation between the research and policymaker making places like the EU, much more than the United States. That's the feeling I have. And that, to some extent, is a little bit of a problem. It takes us to what I said at the beginning, the relationship between the so what of your research. You have given very good example. It seems you are working closely with the EU. When I was in the United Nations, because I had an academic background, I was involving in my research on the World Investment Report and all the commissions and meetings that we had with policymakers. We were bringing in academics to give the solid scientific background that we were needing sometime when delegates were putting forward political position. We at least had the academic side. But I think that perhaps in Europe I had that feeling that it's a little bit more important than in the US. But at the same time, among the academics, it very often looks better to publish in an A-rated journal than for an international organization. It's viewed differently. So this perception is something which, perhaps something which would be worth reconsidering.
So thank you very much. And the same question to Professor Ida Musiałkowska. What about your research? What kind of innovation do you have in your research?
Thank you for this question. And before it's coming to the screen, I'd like to, thank you. Firstly, when we are talking about innovative approach, I think it's a scope of the research I mentioned before. So this is the policy itself that managed to be internally oriented, but it's possible that you can learn from the experiences and use it elsewhere. So this is the first issue. Then the second two are more related to the use of innovative financial instruments, because both cryptocurrencies and public and financial instruments, they are somehow innovative to people, to companies, and to public administration. So they are just dealing with this new instruments, they're learning how to use them, how to implement them into the daily operations. So I would say that this is innovative to some extent, and of course, there are differences, and I would like to give one example, because I was doing a part of my research at the University of Pittsburgh some years ago, and I was just giving a seminar to colleagues at the university, and we couldn't find a common ground on the definition of what's the cohesion as such. So it was not known to the colleagues at the university what it is. So how it should be related to regional development, because we are in here talking about institutional economics, development studies, and international relations. So firstly, we discussed a lot how to find a common line to understand each other. So it was something that also goes in line with what was just said before by Anne, that we have a different approach, but also sometimes we use different concepts, but they are context dependent. So firstly, this is to everybody, that you have to understand the local conditions, the context, in order to operate there, either you are a company or just like individual or a public administration. So this is the first issue. And it was quite striking, but we found this common understanding, and then we just discussed how different are regional policies in the US, because they are, however, not developed to the same extent as we have in Europe, in the European Union, and in Poland as well. So it was the first one. The second issue is, again, related to the context. I was giving seminars and classes in Mexico, in many universities in Mexico, both public and private. And the first issue was to explain how we shape our economics and business in Europe and in Poland. And then we needed to present at least the issue of transition from, given the example of Poland, how we transited from central socialist economy to the current state of the art, and also how we operate right now in integrated Europe, where we have a lot of economic integration going on, and how different it is when we are just comparing it to one state, one country, which is either Mexico or the US, and then how the countries are going to a common agreement when they wish to go with regional integration within the European Union. So it was another context-dependent element that I found a bit different, and also important to be explained at the very beginning, is what we understand by certain notions, by certain concepts, and certain policy-making elements. So I think it was like the most important, and also we have different experiences with students and our colleagues if we are going with our research projects or program studies. So we see completely different reactions of students when we are dealing with some issues with the basic economics, like macro, micro, business strategies, or any other. And we see, firstly, the questions that are coming from American students. So they are open. They are questioning, challenging professors. And for the European students, it's not that common. So I think it's a big difference that we see, and I think it is also visible later on in the business relations. So maybe then it's a bit less visible, but still we see different attitudes. So we see these cultural differences that we need to understand if we want to go together for business relations or any other. So I think it is just like maybe very simple observation, but this is what we have when we're just dealing with teaching and with research projects, how many differences we have, and that first we need to talk to understand each other, then we reduce some barriers, some fears, and then we go and cooperate together. So I think that I would stop in here. Thank you.
So thank you. So thank you very much. And now, after this, the presentation, we'll have the round of questions. And from the audience, do you have any questions towards distinguished guests, distinguished professors? I can see for the moment. Yes. Are there any questions from the audience? So, yeah, okay. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for a lot of inputs, but one maybe general question connected with the defining globalization processes and dealing with data. So maybe the question to Professor Ann, because now we can see this need for the reinventing global value chains, and also we can observe the reshoring processes. So many things change. So there is the question if we still are dealing with globalization or deglobalization processes, and how to measure the current stage of the globalization. Are the data like that useful, or how to use there? Just to say something more, at which stage we are at now talking about the globalization. Thank you very much.
Okay, so please answer the question, yes. Are there any questions that we could collect? Okay, so please answer, yeah? Is there another one? Of course, I have also some questions, but this question will be later on, so thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of discussion on the balance of power, you could say, maybe, and the distribution over the last 20, 40 years between different regions. Something of interest to me, right, is contrasting that with maybe the perspective of rising tide lifts all ships. So maybe, even though maybe there's been a shift away from Europe or other areas, right, as a percentage of top 500 global brands or largest companies in the world, how do you think that contrasts with just the fact that, of course, you know, we're aspiring maybe towards a $100 trillion economy. In countries like China, right, hundreds have been lifted out of poverty. You know, worldwide starvation is down. Things like that, maybe that just speak to the how everyone is doing in the countries they're in, even if as a percentage of the total, right, the percentage might have gone down, but in absolute terms, that region has developed over time.
Are there any questions? Oh, okay, I do believe that other questions will come up, so we'll start with answering the questions.
Thank you very much for the question. So, if I understand you well, you said, you know, to what extent can we say that, you know, there is a decline of globalization, or how is the globalization process, and how can we measure it? Well, it's true that globalization has slowed down. In terms of, there is simple data, which is the share of global trade in global GDP. The percentage has declined over the past 10 years. Yes, so that's true. At the same time, the growth of global trade is much slower than it used to be. So these are signs of slowing down globalization, but perhaps some academics and others think that perhaps it's a kind of a normal phenomenon, is that after a hype, you kind of get on in a more, you know, speed of cruise, which is a little bit normal. So that's the first way. Globalization has slowed down, but it has not, I mean, it's still there, basically. And if perhaps it's not globalization, definitely it's regionalization I mean, the EU is a very good example, but then you have within Asia, for instance, China invests a lot in neighboring countries. Same thing in Latin America. Even in South Latin American continent is a little less, how do you say, tight in terms of economic relations. They don't have an economic, regional trade agreement in Latin America. But you have an example, you take Africa. You know, African countries, when I was working in the UN, it took years. We were actually working with, within UNCTAD on this issue of a regional trade agreement. And now it has been adopted. It's a major step forward. It does not mean that things are going to change from today, from tomorrow, but it facilitates exchanges and harmonizes a number of practices within the continent. So globalization is going on, perhaps in a different shape, but perhaps more at the regional level, but definitely is there. The way to assess this is, as I said, to look at global trade compared to GDP. You look at the foreign direct investment flows, they still go on. They have declined a little bit after the COVID, but it's rebounding. So that, I think, are key elements which have to be taken into account. As far as reshoring is concerned, from what I read, and this is not necessarily academic papers, but more publication done by corporate researchers, like companies which are doing consulting for firms, for instance. But if you take, and this is also a source of information. You have to look at it because that's where the data are. That's where the example is if you work in business studies, for instance. And I think it's, I can't remember if it's a KPMG or of McKinsey studies, but they say that the trend towards reshoring is not really, at least from developing an emerging economy to North economy, it's not really yet taken place. You have, for instance, if companies leave China, it's not necessarily to go back to the US or to Europe, it's to go, I mean, obvious example is Vietnam and Bangladesh. So I have really much more question marks about reshoring, actually, than globalization, definitely. I don't know, perhaps I give the second question can dealt with
so
later.
let's continue with answering the questions. It was to Ida, yeah? Yeah.
I can try
Okay,
that question.
so,
Can IT team, can I have my slides back, please? I actually have 2 papers written in preparation to answer your question. I mean, but the larger question is, you know, what era are we living in, right? Can let me have the remote? So we can debate, but I'm not an economist by training, as I said. So as a strategist, I tend to think from a company standpoint, from a top management standpoint. As the environment is changing, for sure, less global, what do we do, right? So one paper, I mean, there's no need to go through all these papers, right? So one paper is the paper to the right, Conglomeration, Deglobalization, and COVID-19. And the scope of the firm, remember, you probably do, but if you don't, let me remind you. Third fundamental question, what determines the scope of the firm? What is scope of the firm? It's geographical scope. Are you in how many countries? Or product scope, in how many product industries in which you are competing. So determining the product scope of the firm has been one of the leading fundamental questions in strategic management. And I think COVID-19 is the additional impact for deglobalization or slowdown of globalization. So what happened is the winds of globalization were pushing companies to downscope. Downscope means you are not able to compete across many countries, across many different industry lines. You'd better find your core competence areas and your leading markets in which you do better. If your company is from Europe, for sure you want to be strong in Europe. Only on that basis can you go to North America, Asia, Africa, you know, great fun. But if you're not strong in Europe, I don't think you can be a strong multinational as an MNE headquartered in Europe. So that was the advice in much of the strategy research. Until now, we have the wings of deglobalization. So in these two papers, my colleagues and I essentially said, companies are not feeling that much extra pressure to downscope. In fact, if you look at Brexit, right? Britain left the EU. One of the economic benefits for British companies is enhanced trade barriers. Enhanced trade barriers would mean less strong British companies can continue to survive. Without Brexit, less strong British companies cannot face the onslaught of EU companies rushing over there. So in that regard, British companies in the post-Brexit era may feel less pressure to downscope. So that was one point. And of course, I encourage you to look into the details of the papers. I have another paper that I can quickly share. Where is it? Oh, this one. Left side, corporate diplomacy in the age of US-China rivalry. The word diplomacy, we all knew. And we don't even bother to add the word country diplomacy. Diplomacy, by definition, is between governments, right? But I think now, in this new era, companies, especially large ones, and executives, and I mean all these students, today you are students. Tomorrow you will not be executives, but in 10 years, 20 years, you may become executives. You will need to shoulder the responsibility of engaging in corporate diplomacy. Corporate diplomacy is different from country diplomacy. Countries between the United States and China, they can debate, hopefully they don't fight, but they can disagree. But if you were CEO of Apple, you are in both China and the United States, you'd better play a diplomatic function to hold hands of both President Xi and President Biden so that they don't be stupid and go do some real fighting. That is the power and the necessity of corporate diplomacy. And that's something we have not been paying attention because we tend to let company managers do business, let governments, let officials, let presidents do diplomacy. And I think in this new deglobalization era, companies, managers, executives have to do more corporate diplomacy to make sure corporate interests are being preserved. But by doing that, they are also linking these companies, linking these countries through trade and investment linkages so that things don't go out of hand. So these are my two answers. Hopefully they're useful. Well, you don't need this, but.
Okay, so I think I would jump to the discussion, and before I try to answer the second question, I'd like to agree with what was said on economic diplomacy, because it's a very important issue, and it was not taken into account by many, because many people thought that we have country-country diplomacy or international organizations, but it happens at the corporate level and also at NGOs level with regards to the economic and environmental policy, and I think it's one of the effects of current crisis situation, slow globalization, that we need more people in businesses also dealing with public administration and among themselves, just to reshuffle the scene. And coming to the second question, if I understood this well, we see several aspects. In Europe, we see the first issue, the consequences of Brexit and of some of the, I would say, inequalities that we have, an impact on people's living in the cities, in different regions, especially in the places that were neglected by the policy making. So it was lack of proper investment, lack of jobs in particular regions, and right now what we see, it's the rise of populism, and it is very dangerous for any kind of economic and societal life. So we see that at least at the European level and the country level, we see the responses in the policy. So we see new ways of dealing with the problems that were diagnosed. And we see also something at the global arena, I would say, especially with the rise of China, that we see completely different approach towards investment. Because if you compare it, let's say, the European approach, Chinese approach, and other countries' approaches, so you see that EU is using so-called conditionality. So they will offer aid, financial aid or technical aid in order to develop places, but followed by some promises that you go in line with democratization of your political scene, lack of corruption, a sense of ownership of the investment. And in other cases, we don't see it. We see in the investment, but we see also this trade-off. So the countries are losing their resources. They are selling lands. For example, in Latin America, we see many places, many countries that decided to sell the land to Chinese government or companies in order to have money, to have public money, just to tackle with the problems, with societal problems, with these inequalities that are much higher than in Europe and also in the US. So we see different approaches, but well, at least this aim is the same, just to decrease the inequalities and improve the well-being of people. So the goal is common, but the approaches are different. But we see the competition of approaches, and now Europe is losing a bit, I would say, in many terms. But still, we see the problem inside, and we see the shift of both promoting of certain aspects and of the policy making. And we are talking a lot about geographies of this content. So it means that we have places that were really left and they are lagging behind the others. And this is the most problematic issue right now to be tackled under the policy making and in the policy making perspective. I don't know if it's the answer to your question, but this is a broad topic and there's also more question marks than the answers, but we see it, we discuss it in here. So thank you.
So thank you. Would you like to add to the question something, my dear professors?
Maybe I can ask you a question, Ida. So in response to that second question, I don't have an answer, but I have an additional question. The question is, in the face of rising inequality, is being less global a solution? Is raising economic barriers, trade barriers across different countries a way to solve the domestic inequality problem? I just don't see the link. Can you shed some light on this question?
I don't think so.
All right, that's fine. So basically, to solve domestic inequality, you will prefer continued, more open borders, right, for economic purposes, right?
Just maybe one comment. It's more like political issue with the protectionism, and this is also another aspect that is very much important, and also with the current situation that you see with war, with something that we haven't expected to have here in Europe again. So I think it's more like security issues raised and political questions. But for the economic development, I don't think that internal markets will be sufficient just to tackle, to give an answer and to help to reduce the inequality. You need cooperation. Maybe you need to focus on some aspects on trade of services, goods, and of course you need to regulate some issues. But you cannot stop the cooperation. I think it went too far, and the world is too much connected right now. So this is not the proper way of doing things. Thank you.
And if I may ask, at the global level, you were, speaking about, people being lifted out of poverty. We have to recognize that over the past 20 years, a number of countries have to some extent benefited in terms of growth. There has been a decreasing amount in percentage of the global population living in poverty and under poverty. And by the way, there has been almost a complete change of situation situation because of COVID number. There hundreds of millions of people have been going back to poverty because of COVID and because of the restriction. But yes, opening and trade has been an engine of growth for many emerging economies. So the question mark is that if this engine of growth is not there any longer, what's going to happen? For those economies, it's a matter, it's an essential question, and we have to keep that in mind, I think.
So thank you very much, Professor Miroux, for the last answer. I mean, we must, it will be the last answer during this session. Because we are almost close, the first session. So thank you, Professor, for the excellent contribution to the discussion. So we know the perspective, your perspective of your research, also the topics and the scope of your research, and we touch and thank you very much for these questions, because this question focus not only on globalization, but also on inequalities, differences, disparities, and cohesion. And in fact, this topic and these questions will bring us to the topic concerning impact on the society of your research. But we'll continue this discussion during the second session, and we must close the first session. And in a few minutes, we'll meet all together to the second session, focusing on the impact of the research on the society. So thank you very much for your attention, and we'll meet during the second session.